Okay, so I'm working here on my Honda Odyssey. I just want to make a quick video. This is a little cylinder for the key. So there are some gates in here that weren't working, so I wasn't getting full proper rotation there. And the dealer said that the part would be on back order. We wouldn't know quite when it would come in. So that was a big problem. And I was able to order for $20 or $30 just a whole new assembly with the barrel, key stuff. This had to come out. So just the cowling came off the steering wheel, this stuff, right? So 2 screws holding that in. And then there is a little bracket on the top here. This would sit just up like this under the steering wheel. And that had to have this bracket on the top. This is a 2008 Honda Odyssey. These bolts were rounded at the top, so they needed a little groove cut into them so we could use a flat to pull it out. 2 of those. And then the issue I found was the cylinder itself. So this is the new one. I'm reusing my old one. But the little dogs in here, the keepers or gates or whatever they are, when the key would go in, like this, there would still be a little knob left up. So it wouldn't allow it to rotate fully in the cylinder like this. So, I guess a couple of things you could do there. I'm certainly no locksmith and no expert, but those are what came in my kit. The little gates, and a little spring. You can kind of see them in that bag there. So they would go into the gate. You just have to sort of stick your tongue out just the right way or have just enough coffee in you to line those up. Follow the pattern of the key. They're all numbered, so that's good. Each one will have a little number on it. But not super hard to do. Right, there's the number. It's showing up. Just little gates. They'll just fit right into that slot of the key. So you're just going to basically re-gate it, putting these guys in. And then to put it back together, you have to make sure that, one, you have the little gate there. So this can't go all the way down. There's a little keeper and a spring that would go onto the top of this. So a little spring under here, just a little clip that would hold that in place. You're not actually changing any of the electrical stuff here. So this is the electrical, and this is something else. I guess those are unique to the key. So if you had to change a key, you could have a problem. You're not going in and changing any of that. You're just rekeying it or regating it, I guess. I'm not sure what the right term is. And then you're just lining everything up and putting it back together. So put it back together. I've got a little spring that's in here. I'm going to want to put that in to my cylinder first, like this. Make sure everything's lined up nice. I'm going to put my key into it, like this. Oh, see, I lost my little rod. So we'll go back, put the little rod in. That's a little keeper that's just going to go in like this. Stops that from going all the way down. Now you kind of just have to make sure that everything is where it should be. Make sure that everything is spinning and working the way that it should. And then you're going to insert that back into the whole mechanism. There's 2 little grooves that have to line up just the right way there. So install that back in, like that. And the only other thing is there's a button. This is your lock at the top. I'm going to give that a little push. Now everything's working the way that it should. Put that back on top. I would dry fit it first and just make sure that everything is working the way that it's supposed to work before you start screwing everything back together. But this is going to come on the top like that. So this is how you're going to see it as your key goes into it. I'm going to screw in like that. So I've got a couple of screws that have to go in place on here. And in this gate, you might find that the steering wheel is locked up. So you have to remember to push this before you put it back in and make sure that that's opening and closing properly. But we'll do a dry fit, my key in, turn it. Yeah, it's opening and closing. All the way. It's coming off, so that's good. So I'll put my screws back in. I'll still want to dry test it each step of the way to make sure that I'm not putting it all back together and finding out that there's something just a little bit off. That happened to me the first time I did it. But again, I'm not a locksmith, not really a car guy. I like to tinker with stuff like this, but just have to remember to be safe. I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do. I would consult your manual or talk to an actual professional here. This is just sort of a video to show you that it can be done. And the 2008 Honda that we have, we thought may be at the end of its road because we couldn't actually turn the key. So everything was fine with the engine and the frame and the body and everything, but if you can't turn it on, you can't really go too far. And we didn't really want to, like a lawn ornament, so now I've got those screws back in. I'm going to give it another dry test. Put my key in. I want to make sure that this lock here is going to engage and disengage. So key all the way in. Turn it. So the lock comes out. Key off. So it's working the way that it should. I'm not getting any sticky key anymore. So that's good. Apply both sides. Yeah. So we're good that way. So now I'm going to just install it back into the vehicle. Okay, so I've got you down here now. I'll just show you how this goes back in. So again, making sure that everything is working smooth. My gate is opening and closing for the lock at the top. My key is coming and going without any hesitation. So that's good. Now it's just a matter of lining everything back up and reinstalling this mechanism. So it's going to come up under like this. So it came out the same way that it's going to go on. I'm going to have to grab my screws. For this, you need sort of just the right size screwdriver. There's a little screw at the top. That's it like that. Now you just have to find your screwdriver. Okay, there's your screwdriver. So there are 3 screws holding this thing on. might have to kind of come at it at a different angle here. I'll start with these bottom screws. It's a little bit tight to work with. You kind of want to have a special little screwdriver like this, little ratchet socketing screwdriver, because it's so tight. But once I get these screws in, then we're kind of off to the races. It's not a terrible hard job. It's just a little bit finicky. Again, no expert, but I'd start with just putting these in light and then working your way around to get all three in before you start tightening up too much. There we go. Two of the three. This was the tricky one on this side. So it just fits right up in here. I'll just make sure I have those on nice and snug. I think I do. It's better to check before you tighten it all back down. Yeah. So this is the tricky one. You kind of get that finger tight. Like that. And then I'll tighten up the other two. So I'm a small engine guy. I don't really get into this car stuff too often. Really just for my own stuff here and there. Not that I don't like this stuff, but it's just not really where my passion is. The only reason I really got into this was because I didn't really have any choice. We were facing a $600 or $700 part that was on back order, but when I called the dealer and then started subsequently calling multiple dealers, all the Honda dealers said that it was on back order and they didn't know when they'd get it, if they'd get it, and there was no real other option. Some of the dealers were really good and they said that they'd call me back and let me know if they could find anything out, but at the end of the day I never got calls back on this stuff, so it wasn't very good. We didn't really know what to expect here. One, two, three. So sorry, I paused the video because I thought I found a screw. It was this one here. Found that screw. And I thought before I start going too far, I better pull it and make sure that it's not a missing screw there. And it was. So better put that back in place. And I'll put it all back together again. Sort of that check for missing screws and things before you start going too far, because no point in having to take it all apart again. We'll just do one more gate test on it before we go ahead and reinstall it again. So it's turning and turning on, disengaging properly and opening, turning on, disengaging and opening properly, so we're good. All right, so we'll put it back together. See how that goes again. not a bad idea to sort of keep your eye on the screws and bolts and sort of know where and how many you have left when you're working on stuff like this. I'm a huge fan of magnet trays, but I'm just in my driveway playing this game right now. Again, I wouldn't go too tight on these yet. Just make sure you get everything in place first. This one's almost all finger tight, and then just a little bit with the wrench. The screwdriver. Definitely a tight spot. Okay, one more at the top. Yeah, hopefully this video can help somebody, because it's not a terribly hard job. I think if you have a little bit of mechanical ability, you should be able to get in here and switch these out. You just want to make sure that you're being safe and don't do anything that you aren't comfortable or don't feel you can do safely. And I'm certainly no expert. I could be getting into some dangerous things here that I'm not aware of, but I am quite safety conscious, and I really like to make sure that things are safe. So I did disconnect the battery, and I'm trying to keep myself out of the line of this potential airbag. But it shouldn't go off. I'm certainly no expert when it comes to cars and airbags and that sort of stuff. So when in doubt, just try to be a little bit safer. So I'm trying not to have tools in front of me over the airbag and that sort of stuff as much as possible. So now I've got that in place. Now we've got this clamp that's going to come on and hold the whole mechanism back onto the steering column. So there are 2 bolts on the top. That's just going to be with a flat flathead screwdriver, because we've cut 2 little grooves in the top of those bolts again, like that. They aren't really made to come out, I guess, because they don't have a head to them. And that's another sort of awkward, tight spot, but it's not too bad. It's probably not a bad idea to have screwdrivers and things set. I'm using one adjustable one. I'm trying to do with this just with the tools that I would normally carry on the vehicle, just in case it happened at some point. One thing I did find, I'm not sure about the quality of these gates that came from Amazon. They look pretty good, but this is the second time I'm in here, and I did notice that one gate started to move a little bit, but my options were sort of such that I didn't have a lot of choice here. I'm sure if you went to a locksmith, you could probably get those little keepers or gates or whatever they're called, but I opted to order from Amazon, and I'm gonna just see what happens with this other gate. I figured if push came to shove, I could always remove the one that was sticking up slightly, and it might just be an issue with the key, but that's okay. We can cross that bridge when we come to it. Doesn't take a whole lot of time to do this once you sort of have done it a few times. So I think this is my third time going into here, and it's not terrible. I just haven't seen a lot on this, so I figured maybe it's not the best video quality. You get to listen to a guy ramble a little bit, but if it saves somebody a little bit of trouble or gives you somebody a little bit of insight as to what they might be able to do, then why not? Heck, you can fast forward or slow down or do whatever you want to do with the video. Okay, those are nice and snug now, so now we'll just try it. Oh, can't try it. Well, we can try it dry without the battery hooked up. So it's still engaging, disengaging, and we'll hook this stuff back up. That's that one. Should have been 3 that came off. So presumably there should be 3 that go back on. They're all different sizes, of course, so that sort of helps things a little bit. Where is the last one, though? There it is. Yeah, if you don't put all these guys back in, you're probably gonna have some trouble. All right, so put those guys back in. Hook the battery back up. Just gonna not be in front of the airbag just in case, but I don't think we'll have a problem. In. Oh, and we're good. So we've got everything working the way that it should now. And I'll pause you for a second and move you back up. Okay, so I'm just putting the cowling back on, or the plastic covers, under and above the steering wheel. They're not too bad, they're just a little bit tight. So you sort of have to just get everything lined up the right way and just take your time. Back to my screws. So there are 2 plastic screws like this that are going to sit at the bottom. They're not too bad to get in, but you kind of just have to make sure that you get everything lined up nicely. And take your time to find the hole. That one went super smooth. I was using my good shop screwdrivers. This would be a little bit easier, but you know, this little cheap ratchet set is working nicely. Just something I keep in the back of the vehicle. And again, I wanted to see if I could get this done if I had to do it sort of in the middle of a parking lot or something, if these gates were to fail on me. So it's sort of a little bit of a challenge that way, just to see if we could do it in the field. And one thing I'm gonna just throw into that little toolkit is just this little guy here, because I don't know that I get everything off without that. And why not have another little tool in the van? All right. So I got those 2 screws in the bottom. Just make sure they're nice, snug down. Yeah, so let me know if you have any questions. It was just a cheap kit. Again, I think I paid $20 for it. I've been into this now twice. I'm not sure if it's an issue with my key or one of the gates, but I literally opened it up again, pulled everything out, pulled the gates, found the problem right away because one of the gates was sitting slightly higher in the cylinder. So this is the one that came with the kit. I have the original in the van, but one of those little teeth was poking up ever so slightly. So when you went to turn the key, it was catching on the top. So pretty easy. You can only go into that chamber one way, right? You can see the difference there. And then same on the top, it can only fit in one way. So pretty straightforward that way. Now I just have to get my top cover back on, and we'll give it one more dry test, and we'll be golden. Off to the races with the Honda Odyssey. There. Done like dinner. Try it one more time. In. Oh yeah. Key comes in and out. Goes on both sides nicely. Yeah. I think we are golden. So that was probably about an hour's job. Probably took me a bit longer the first time. This is the simple little tool set I have I keep in the van, just with your ratchets and your sockets and your stuff like that. So I would have been able to do it almost with this, but you would need to cut the grooves in those two bolts that would sit just over the top under that cowling. So you need a little Dremel tool or grinder for that. And you'd also need a little something so you can get your Phillips screwdriver into that tight space. So hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. Have fun out there. Bye.